Welcome to the Tech and Space Leader Show. I am your host, Lisa Dreher, and here is where we learn lessons from leaders of the next frontier. I am really excited to introduce our guest for today, Jon Beam. He is the co-founder and CEO of Rogue Space Systems. Welcome to the show, Jon.
Thank you very much, Lisa. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. Thank you for making time to be here today. Can you give us a little bit of background on yourself and Rogue Space Systems?
Sure. I'm a little bit of an odd duck for the space community, but I got my start with a graduate degree in cognitive systems and behavioral neuroscience, which is a bit of a mouthful, but there I studied both artificial and animal learning models. However, that led to basically an IT career for about 25 years, where I went through all various levels of IT and IT management. And I ended up working for both federal government and in several industries, both financial services and insurance. And both of these are, highly regulated industries as well. So they ended up being actually a better fit than you might think for what I've been doing now. The common thread through all that was, basically leading collaborative innovation teams. So that's kind of what I've been doing my whole life. And I kind of sometimes tell a joke that, I've done brain surgery, so why not rocket science? So I've gotten to do a lot of fun stuff in my life.
Wow. Okay, so tell us a little bit about Rogue Space Systems and how
Sure.
you came to be leading that organization.
Yeah. So 4 years ago, myself and our two other founders got together, and we initially were trying to put our heads together, trying to find a solution for the in-space debris problem, which we realized was definitely a problem and still is. But after beginning to do some tech development and getting more into the industry, we realized that there just wasn't a market for it yet. That's starting to turn around, especially in Europe and Japan, but still there's not a whole lot of money going out for debris remediation. So we asked ourselves, we're designing all this cool robotic, in space technology. What else is it good for? So we decided to make a bit of a pivot, which small businesses can do, which we did, and we focused on in-space servicing, ISAM. And then since then, probably over the last year, we really kind of harnessed our focus towards in-space logistics. And that's sort of where we're hanging our hat right now, sort of the best term and best subsegment of the market for us.
Great, great, great. So talk a little bit about that. Give us a little bit more information. What does that mean?
Yeah, sure. Well, let me start with just, we see kind of a problem right now in the new space economy. If you think of a current, a typical space mission now, you've got a lone free flying satellite, that gets launched into orbit. It does typically some sort of data service for a number of years. Then it reaches its thruster propellant reserve level, and then it gets reclassified as space debris. That's sort of, it's sort of like buying a new car off the lot, driving it until it runs out of gas and then having to leave it on the side of the road. It's just not a very sustainable model. So we're working on infrastructure. We think the future, especially of commercial space, is around having a multi-tenant kind of infrastructure with uncrewed platforms that can host in-space manufacturing, recycling, can be a fuel depot or a material depot, et cetera. Think of it as almost like a cell phone or a smartphone in space. We want to kind of introduce an app economy in space, so to speak. So our platform is that smartphone kind of infrastructure, the ability to have a highly standardized platform that things can plug into. We're also developing what we call our ore blocks, which are intermodal shipping containers, payload containers, and our orbots, which are robotic spacecraft, which will be able to service these uncrewed platforms, and also have them as home based, at the platforms, but to be able to go out and service other satellites. So that's sort of our big picture mission, and we're right now bootstrapping ourselves. So our beachhead market right now is in space servicing, or rather hosted payload services. So we're able to take commercial payloads on board, whether they be propulsion units, encryption. In fact, our mission in February is, which will be our second mission. We'll have two propulsion payloads and a encryption payload on it. So that's an example of what we're doing, both hardware and software, testing it out for future customers. And that both, is a revenue producer. It gives us a bootstrapping way of, every 9 months we're going to have a new mission and be able to, get to this technology with the space stations and the robotic spacecraft. And also it gives us, kind of preview to some of the best tech out there.
Yeah, no doubt. Wow, that sounds amazing. So when you talk about these payloads, what are you able to host? I know you said hardware and software, but I mean in terms of size of payload and that sort of thing, what can you host?
Sure. Initially, we're standardizing on ESPA class satellite buses. It's kind of the best bang for the buck, we think, in terms of launch costs and payload size, the swap that it can carry. So we can pretty much take anything that will fit in that ESPA envelope and, mass requirements. It could be large telescopes, it could be, tiny devices, it could be, any type of software, basically. We've got quite a bit of cloud computing, edge computing resources on board all of our spacecraft. Also, I think one thing that makes us unique is all of our missions are going to be dynamic. In other words, they will have propulsion and we'll be able to, change orbits. We will also be able to carry out RPOD missions, which is rendezvous and proximity operations and docking. So, essentially we will have a test bed up there that companies that, want to pursue our RPOD or ISAM can test out their sensors, their propulsion, avionics, LiDAR, radar, you name it. We'll have a platform where all of those can be tested in a fairly real type scenario. And we do plan to have RPOD ConOps as part of all these future missions.
Wow, amazing. Okay, so you said your next launch is coming up in February of
That's
2025,
right.
but I understand you have a couple of other launches scheduled as well.
Yeah, we're hoping to get on a cadence where we have one every 9 to 10 months, and we think over time we're going to be able to shorten that a little bit. We're really working on standardization and extensibility in our platform, such that we'll be able to cut that integration time down, cut the integration costs down, which is better for our customers as well. And ultimately, we'll scale up to the point with these platforms that we'll be able to host, hundreds of payloads at a time at a very low cost. And one of the ways that we're going to do that is we're pursuing what we're calling busless payloads. So, think of an Orbot, a robotic spacecraft. Imagine separating the core bus, sort of like a truck chassis with, a payload container that is on it. So we want to separate those two, and we think that will create a much more reusable, space market to be able to the ability for a robotic vehicle to move these back and forth to, bring up raw materials for in space manufacturing, to bring back finished goods, to install them on down mass vehicles. So that's sort of the direction that we're going with all this.
Wow. Okay. This is so exciting. Definitely having worked in the space industry for a while, I know there's several companies that could leverage these types of services.
Yeah.
It's hard to get on flights, just because there's only so many happening at any
Yeah.
given point in time. There's limited payloads. There's so many challenges. I think there's a bit of a kind of bottleneck there for the industry.
Yeah.
So to hear that there's somebody that might be loosening up that bottleneck a little bit is really exciting.
Yeah, we're super excited about it. And we actually do have slots open for software payloads in our February mission. The reason being because we'll be able to, upload the software and, be able to test it out in C2, from the get-go. And then we're also open for both hardware and software for our later missions.
Okay, great. So everybody heard it here first. No, well, probably not first, but
Very good.
okay. So tell me a little bit, we hear a lot about autonomy. What role will that play in the future of on-orbit services?
Yeah, autonomy is just, I cannot overemphasize the importance of it. One of the main reasons is communications. As you know, especially in low Earth orbit, communications are extremely spotty. You might get, 5 to 10 minute windows here and there when you're over a ground station, and that's it. And, you can't build a successful servicing mission with little, 5 to 10 minute windows because you're going to run into something.
Mhm.
So, even at its simplest form of collision avoidance, autonomy is just absolutely imperative. And then, whether you have a human in the loop, on the loop, or not in the loop at all, other than just giving, high level goals, autonomy is just very important for productivity as well. You need to be able to use, every moment of every orbit, especially when you have, power coming in, to be able to do these operations. Good lighting, there's lots of windows of opportunities where you need to get something done. And if you can't talk to it, it needs to be able to carry out those goals, in the background and prioritize all the various needs of the spacecraft that are going on at any given time.
Right, right, right. So that's kind of your way of working around those windows. Have you looked at other solutions to potentially, I guess, stretch that communications channel so that you
Yeah,
have more regular communications?
yeah, definitely. We're really excited about where space communications is going. There are lots of laser comms terminals that are being tested now. Some of them we hope will be, early customers of ours, to get through that testing cycle. Um, also there's the constellations like Starlink and OneWeb and Kuiper and, others that, are promising for, giving more constant communication. So we do see this as a very important evolutionary step and will be very important in terms of greater productivity. But still, things go wrong in space. There's, solar radiation, there's, all sorts of space weather, even, you know, uh, when times are bad, things coming from Earth that, can disrupt, good comms. And, having the ability to kind of weather the weather, so to speak, with an autonomy system is going to be really important in any case.
Indeed, indeed. Okay, so I want to jump to some slightly different questions that are more just kind of
Sure.
general business questions. And, obviously, Rogue Space Systems has really experienced some success so far. What has been kind of the secret to your success so far?
Yeah. Um, I think first and foremost, just knowing ourselves has been really critical. And then, once we understand who we are, what drives us, kind of the why behind everything that we're doing, finding the right people that really synergize with that and are just, really uplifted by it and just, uh, throw our caution to the wind and go on that journey with you. So for us, we were able to, I think, do a few really critical things right. So first of all, we just thought about our culture on day one. Peter Drucker is noted as saying, "Culture eats strategy for lunch," and we really believe that. We think it's so important. So one of the things that we did was we established our core values, very early on. Ours are focus on legacy, ideas above self, humble compassion, seekers of truth, and driven. And we use these values in everything that we do. We hire, we fire, we reward. We talk about them in every all hands meeting. They're just core of what we do. They're not just phrases that are up on the wall. They truly are our DNA. Also, we thought through some of our cultural distinctives. We decided to be a mostly virtual company from early on. And that's been really helpful in terms of getting, really qualified people from all over the, continental US. So that's been a big win for us. And also just, we started out with just letting it be known that we had a very entrepreneurial culture. So, you've got to be a self-starter at Rogue because you're just going to get thrown into the deep end, before you know it. We've got so many bids going on. We're very active in the DoD SIBR and SITR program where we have over a 50% selection rate, which is, pretty high. And,
Yeah.
we're constantly working on, different projects. So even our, 2-year-old engineers, so to speak, have like really significant leadership roles within Rogue. And we just, we try to give people a floor and not a ceiling, and let them take on as much as they can and just be there for them to help them grow. So that's been really key for us.
Wow, that's great. Okay, so is there anything that you would do different if you were to start all over?
Yeah, I think I would do more market research up front. Actually, two things: market research and go to market strategy developing. And they're kind of interrelated, but where we are right now, this in space economy just, or the new space economy, so to speak, isn't quite here yet. There's some demonstration missions being paid for by the space agencies and the US Department of Defense and a few other places, but we don't have this robust circular real space economy yet. So market research is a little tough in that environment, in that you're not only just kind of putting feelers out there to see what's there, it's more coming up with a strategy of how are we in the broader space community going to stimulate and build and drive this new economy. So it's all about influence. So I
Mhm.
think, in retrospect now, hindsight being 2020, would have spent more time on that in just terms of how to try to lead and get this, especially the upcoming commercial economy centered around in space manufacturing and those kind of things, how to get that community embedded into the in space servicing committee, so together we can use our synergies, what we're good at together, to build stations and the manufacturing platforms on the stations, that sort of thing. So, and then finally go to market strategy. It's tough when you don't know what your market is to kind of plot out how you're going to get there. But just very recently, over this last 6 months, we've really had a disciplined approach to figuring out all the technology steps that we want to take between where we're at today and the full-fledged, what we call our waypoint ecosystem, and all that logistics capability. And we've got at least 12 steps. And we figured out kind of a bootstrapping approach that with hosted payload missions, we're going to be able to progress each stage through our technology pipeline and have each of these missions paid for by customers. So I think that's been huge for us. It's really lowering the need for gathering private investment, which has been a nightmare. And we're at a point where we almost don't even need a raise at this point. We can use a little bit right now, but we may be at a point where we're going to be able to self-sustain pretty early in our evolution here. So if I could have done this a couple of years ago, we'd be a little further ahead. But you gotta go to your school of hard knocks and learn some of these lessons along the way.
That's very uncommon what you're doing in this, especially in the space industry where things tend to cost a lot to get off the ground,
Yeah,
so to speak. So yeah,
yeah.
absolutely. Well, so if somebody wanted to learn more about Rogue Space Systems and perhaps become one of your payload partners, what should they do?
Yeah, I would send them to our website, https:// rogue.space. That's RU. Oh, you see it right above me, ROGUE.
Yeah.
Or you can email me at jon.beam@rogue.space, and that's John with JON, and beam like laser beam.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, I want to thank you so much for making time to be here today, Jon. It's a very
Please.
exciting program that you're working on here, and really look forward to seeing all of the great work Rogue Space Systems will be doing here in the future.
Well, thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun.
Absolutely, my pleasure. And I do want to take a moment to thank GuideForce for hosting these sessions. To learn more about GuideForce, you can visit guideforce.com. And we'll see you next time on the Tech and Space Leader Show.